Actually, guys, I actually have a newfound interest in the Holocaust, like breaking it down and just kind of looking at the events surrounding it. Like, let's actually break it down for you laymen out there. While I get my joint going, while I roll this joint real quick. All right, make the filter first. But let's break it down for you guys real quick. So World War II begins 1939. Why did it begin? Why did World War II begin in 1939? Well, then you got to look at the Munich conference, which happened in 1938. What happened there? Basically, the Sudeten crisis, which was basically Hitler threw a tantrum. He said, "I want the Sudetenland because there's genocide being happening against the." No, that's what Hitler said. He said there was a genocide happening against the German Sudeteners that were living in Czechoslovakia, which was partially true. It was partially true. There was some things happening over there, but he tried to use it as a pretense for invasion. And then they had a massive conference between the world leaders, France, England, but they excluded Czechoslovakia from the talks. Remember Peace in Our Time, when Neville Chamberlain was holding that piece of paper and he was exiting the plane and he was telling everyone in the British public, "This is peace in our time. This is peace in our time. Well, we've averted the threat of a world war." And how did he do that? He did that by basically carving up Czechoslovakia like a cake. He gave the biggest cake to Germany. The biggest cake went to Germany. This is an analogy based on carving up a territory based on a dictator's demands. Now, why did they kowtow to Hitler's demands? Why were they appeasing him? Why were they using a policy of appeasement? There was a lot of factors going into this. France had just lost millions of men pertaining to the World War, the first one. So they didn't want to get drawn into a second one unnecessarily. They felt like, who wants to die for Danzig? Well, we're going to move on to Poland later on in this chapter. I've kind of researched a lot of different things compared to the war. So when you actually think about it, who's to blame for the Munich conference and who's to blame for the Czechoslovakia thing? I would say that, looking at all the historical documents and everything that I've looked at, it's a tough one because Poland also took part in the carving up of Czechoslovakian territory. They took a piece of the territory as well. Poland also did. The history cannot be lied about. History cannot be changed. The Poles took some territory from Czechoslovakia when they should have allied themselves with Czechoslovakia. Now that's one factor. Now let's move on to the main part. Now Hitler, he wanted Czechoslovakia because he wanted to weaken the West and strengthen himself in the East because he wanted Lebensraum and he wanted to absorb more territory for the German public and people and blah, blah, blah. So what happened was, long story short, Czechoslovakia was partitioned based on the borderline that was built by Germany. They got everything they wanted, everything. But Hitler said he wouldn't take the rest of Czechoslovakia. He would only take the German lands that were part of the Germans. And that's what Neville Chamberlain took as like, okay, he's telling the truth. Maybe he's not actually going to do this. And he's not going to take everything. And he's just going to take the parts that are pertaining to the German people. And he wants to protect the Germans. And he's doing this for Germany. But come to find out, a few months later, Hitler takes the rest of Czechoslovakia and takes over. And then Slovakia, he makes it an independent, not independent, but he makes it a puppet state of Nazi Germany. I mean, the things he did were kind of calculated and very smart. He took as much territory as he could before there would be a war. Now, let's move on to Poland. This is the straw that broke... I believe Poland was the straw that broke the camel's back in the most fullest sense of the term. Now, Danzig, that's the next chapter. The first chapter is Czechoslovakia, but it even goes further back than that. It goes back to the Treaty of Versailles. If you really want to look at the reasons why World War II actually happened, you got to go all the way back to the Treaty of Versailles that happened after World War I. Then you got to go all the way back there. But no, let's stick to the 1930s here. And when did Hitler become the Chancellor of Germany? 1933, right? So he was in charge. And who voted him in? The German public. He was voted in democratically by the German people, bro. Like he was elected. They wanted him. He was their leader. And they all believed in him. One Führer. They all believed in him. All the German people believed in him. Bro. There was no partisans in Germany in World War II. There was no opposition party, nothing. Everyone, they all had one single focus on the Führer. Like they were just like they were so enamored by him. Now, you go further. I mean, obviously, it's easy to say now that it was Neville Chamberlain's fault that World War II happened. But if you really think about it, what could he have done differently? He could have done a lot of things differently. Like France shouldn't have let the remilitarization of the Rhineland happen in 1937, I believe, or 36. I'm not sure exactly which year it was, but the remilitarization of the Rhineland was, and the Anschluss, when Germany reunited with Austria, they should have stopped it back then. They had the power to stop it back then because Hitler wasn't going to. He didn't have the power to rival France's when he was going for remilitarization, because after the Treaty of Versailles, he was only limited to 100,000 men, a specific amount of warships, a specific amount of ammunition. Everything was basically kowtowed. Like everything was written down. You could only have this much. You could only have this much. But then, like as he grew more confident and bolder, he grew more bold and bold because he started to see, okay, I can take Czechoslovakia. Okay, I can do this. I can take Austria. Okay, I can remilitarize the Rhineland. Oh, what about Poland? I always wanted Danzig. Why can't I do it now? So his thinking was, okay, I want Danzig. I'm gonna take Danzig because I'm gonna say, oh, this is historic German territory, and I'm doing it for the Germans, and Danzig is always German. Blah blah blah. he everything was a lie, bro. Like he was never going to stick to his word ever. Every treaty he signed, he broke. Everything he said he was gonna do, he did the opposite. So, you know, it's interesting when you kowtow to a dictator's demands. This is what happens. That's what happens, and then the war happened. But Poland, let's stick to that point. Danzig. He wanted Danzig, and he said that he wanted the Polish corridor as well, so that he could link Pomerania with East Prussia, right? Because Pomerania is somewhere there, and then like it's somewhere like in the north, like it's next to Kaliningrad, I believe. I'm not sure, like the modern day Kaliningrad, but that's modern day Kaliningrad is East Prussia, I believe, right? But he wanted to link west and east, Polish corridor, Danzig with East Prussia. That was what he was saying. Now, you know, I gotta give the Poles some credit. They declined. They said no. We will not give you Danzig unless we will not give you Danzig. They didn't. They said no. They said no, flat out. They refused flat out. And Neville Chamberlain did kind of double down on his. He said that they did get. I mean, I gotta give him a little bit of credit because they did give Poland. What do you call it? They gave them independence. Like they gave them like a guarantee of independence, right? So if someone broke their sovereignty, then they would go to war with the aggressor, right? Which was Germany at that time in our current timeline. That's what happened. So Germany, they wanted Danzig and they took it and they got it. And that's it. And then World War II began. This is kind of like a little overview of World War II and why it happened. You know, dictators and shit like that. But it was interesting, like, and then Anne Frank. It's interesting how people only talk about Anne Frank, and she is the face of the Holocaust. But what about all the millions of other people that died, like the disabled people that got killed in the euthanasia experiments that the Nazis did? What about all those people that died in the political concentration camps? What about all those people that died in the partisan camps when they were killing people? Like, what happened after the partisans killed Reinhard Heydrich? They would round up tens of thousands of people from the public and they would keep them as hostages and kill all of them as revenge for killing one high-ranking SS member. It's interesting how they only talk about Anne Frank. I'm not laughing at her death. I'm just laughing at the absurdity of it all. Like, I just don't understand why they only focus on her. Like, she's important, of course. She has a story, of course. It's important, of course. But at the same time, like, what about all those people that died in Yugoslavia, like under Tito? All those partisans that were trying to fight for independence in Serbia or like all these different states. What about all those people that died in Russia that were trying to get away from the Nazis? All those partisans that died for their freedom and they were trying to kill the Nazis. The Russians were primarily the reason why World War II actually worked out and worked. Bro, they were allies with the Americans and the British and the Netherlands. They were all allies. Like, they were all allied together. That's another story. Stalin only really allied with the West because it was an alliance of mutual interest. Yeah, pretty much. The Soviets and the Americans only allied because of mutual interest. Because my answer is what's that word I'm looking for? It's dignified, because after World War II, what happened? What happened after World War II? Come on, guys. Come on, class. What's up? Ah, yes, I know what happened after World War II. The Cold War happened. Why did it happen so quickly? Why did America go to war with Russia? Why did they set up the buffer zone in Germany? Why did they do that? Because the Russians were never friends. They were only an alliance of mutual interest. That's politics. One day you can be friends with someone, and the next day you're enemies, man. Politics, it's interesting how it works. But yeah, I mean, of course, it was the lesser of two evils also, because they didn't want the Nazis to take over. They thought they could control the Russians a lot easier than the Nazis, and the enemy of my enemies, my friend, like Winston Churchill. I mean, it's still a lot of things. Why didn't they go to war with Russia after Russia invaded Poland with the Nazis, after they had the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact? Why didn't the West go to war with Russia? Because Russia did attack Poland, and they did have a pact with the Nazis, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was an alliance. It was really a pact of politics, really mutual interest, because the Germans, they couldn't take Poland without angering the Soviets. So they needed to basically tell the Soviets, hey, I'm going to invade. You guys can take half and I take half. How about that? Because if the Germans invaded without telling the Soviets would possibly attack as well, and then there would be a massive conflict. Hitler wanted to be free to do whatever he wanted in the East. That's why the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was part of. That's why the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact existed, because of that. He wanted to do whatever he wanted to do in the East without the Soviets interfering. And the plan worked. And it was also to buy time so that he could invade the Soviet Union, which was what happened in our timeline. He invaded in 1941. Yeah, I just find it a bit weird, man. Obviously, Anne Frank deserves respect. She deserves this. She deserves, of course, nothing against her. I think she was she's a human being like me. But why? But check this out. Who betrayed her? Who betrayed her? Who was the one that betrayed her? And she went to die in the concentration camp. Dutch person did it. I don't know how long did it take for the Germans to take over Netherlands? A couple days, 6 hours or something. No, I think I heard that. I read somewhere that the Nazis they told the Dutch government in 1940. They told them, we're gonna bomb Rotterdam if you don't surrender. They basically threatened them, and they said, we're gonna bomb Rotterdam if you don't surrender, with planes and all this shit. But they bombed. But check this out, guys. Check this out. They bombed it anyways after the surrender. Because apparently the official record, the official history book says the Germans didn't get the surrender request or the surrender alert in time, so they sent the bombers out anyways. I don't understand that. How does that work? Like, we're already at war. Like, what? How much worse can you actually do to me? We're at war already. Like, we're already fighting. Like, we're already fighting. Like, you're bombing my cities and razing them all to the ground. You're killing everyone. Like, what difference does it make? Why would I surrender at that point? What worse can you do to me at that point? Like, right? But in the context of the Netherlands, they probably were right to surrender. I mean, no, they weren't actually, because when you actually really look at it, this country is like really well suited for defense, right? Why didn't they just ally with the French and the British in 1940? They could have withstood the invasion, bro. They could have withstood the invasion if they allied with the French and the British, right? I mean, that's history revisionism, but that's historic revisionism, but still, like, they could have won if they linked up with the Belgians and the British. But the reason they didn't do that was because they didn't want to provoke Nazi Germany. That's the reason. I mean, don't get mad at me. But yeah, interesting history. I like talking about this stuff sometimes, on the internet. Yeah, I just don't like how she's the only person that gets talked about. What about all those other people that died trying to survive and do all this stuff? Only she? What did she? She wrote a book, bro. I'm just talking. I read her book. I listened to her audiobook as well. So I'm just kind of being facetious now. But, it's sometimes you kind of gotta think about why certain things are the way they are, right?